Today we're going to talk about focal length. Many of you are probably asking yourself, what is focal length? Actually, you're probably asking, why should I care? And I don't know. But I'm going to talk about it anyway. Focal length is very simply the distance between your outermost portion of a lens and the surface of your photosensitive material, whether it's film or a CCD sensor. That distance is going to determine how your image looks, and not just how far away or close up something appears to be, but their proportions. For example, this is a 35mm lens, this is a 200mm lens. On here is a 50mm lens. Now if you've ever gone shopping for a digital camera, maybe not a webcam, but a normal digital camera like the one I'm filming this with, you'll notice whenever they list the focal length of the lens, which is always in millimeters, just like these, they give you their 35mm equivalent. And what that's referring to is simply, well, if this were a 35mm camera instead of a digital one, what size lens would they be? Now the reason for that is simply one of ratios. Ratios are my favorite mathematical principle. A 35mm frame of film is, as the name implies, 35mm tall. A CCD sensor, like in this webcam for example, is not even 1/10 of that. As such, lenses need to be scaled down significantly. Otherwise, it's the equivalent of swan diving onto a thimbleful of water. You will get a little bit wet, that's for sure, but you'll get a lot more hurt. We're going to compare two wide-angle settings, or rather a wide-angle setting and a telephoto setting, and see exactly what they mean when using a camera like this, which has the ability to switch between these two lengths, and what that's going to mean for what your image will look like, not just how close or how far away something is. What you're seeing now is the set of double doors that I've been filming the last few videos of mine in front of. Right now the CyberShot is set to its shortest possible focal length, therefore its widest field of view, which is about 4mm. That's its 35mm equivalent. It goes to as high as 42. Meanwhile, in CyberShot dimensions, the actual focal length only varies between about 3 and 5. I was keeping my aperture, or rather my angle, to about this wide and just putting the camera a little closer instead of actually zooming it, for a reason I'll get to in a bit. The trouble is, as you can see, with as wide as it is, the image is a little distorted. Now the title card in the center may seem fine, all perfectly straight and right angled, but look at the doors on the side. So they kind of curve out a little bit, and overall the texture of the wood kind of gives the door the impression of bulging out, sort of like in a cartoon. Now at this distance it's not too noticeable, but like I said, when I keep it a little closer up, it makes my proportions a little bit, well, weird. It makes my head look a little small. If I hold up my hands to gesture or show something, they look abnormally large, and as well as whatever I'm holding up. So overall it's just very distracting and not accurate. The solution I found to this problem was really very simple. Since the problem was actually the focal length being too narrow, or rather too short, and therefore the angle of view too wide, simply move the camera back and zoom in a little bit. And given that I already zoom in a little bit anyway to cut out the sides of the doors, it actually looks pretty good. But already, this is the camera back a little farther but zoomed in a little bit. And already, the doors are still a little bit curved on the side, but it's not as bad as it was. So like I said, when I'm zoomed a little further in to frame my head and shoulders and everything, it's a little more proportionate and looks a little better. That's a typical solution to that problem, but it does have a bit of a trade-off. So you see, by moving the camera back and zooming in a little bit, I've actually solved the problem of the distorted image. The trouble is, I've created another in terms of sound. A wise man once said, sound is half the movie, at least. And that's a problem that faces a lot of consumer level equipment. This is a fairly standard middle-of-the-road Sony CyberShot. Some of you are probably using flip ultra cameras, maybe bloggies. Most of you are probably using your phone, your iPhone. Some of you are also probably using a webcam, one that's built in your computer or one that you bought separately. The thing about most of that equipment is the internal microphone isn't so much made with whatever you're shooting in mind as, well, you in mind, and as the person holding and operating the camera. The thing is, people will forgive a mediocre, washed out, faded, or otherwise uninteresting image if the sound is good. And the reason why you probably tend to see a lot of unboxing videos or product reviews is that they're fairly easy to make from a technical standpoint. Because if you're standing behind a camera aimed at the product, they're hearing you, you're giving your voiceover, and that's coming in clearer than anything else. So, the problem here is that by placing it farther back, I put more distance between me and the microphone. Now, obviously the solution is, well, I just need to project a little bit more. But that doesn't really solve things much either, because then I'm shouting. Also, if you live in any place that has vaulted ceilings, or if you're maybe in a cramped space, you live with other people, or your camera is near something like a refrigerator, or an air conditioner, or a computer even, that's background noise that microphone will pick up, and you'll be competing with all that. So this is why between the consumer market and the prosumer market, the difference isn't actually in the optics, it's not in the quality of the picture, though there is a difference. The biggest leap, the biggest boundary to overcome when producing web content is sound. If your videos don't sound good, then people aren't even going to so much as listen to them. They're not even going to open another tab and just listen to you while you're making a video. They're just going to turn it off because they can't understand what you're saying, or the sound is bad, there's a drone. People don't want that. People will forgive a mediocre image, but there's not a lot you can do for sound. You see, like I said, this is a fairly middle-of-the-road, average Sony Cybershot. And this little hole up here, that's my microphone. So as you can imagine, it's not very good at picking up a lot of sound. It's fairly sensitive, but usually not sensitive toward what I need it to be. Now, of course, the obvious question would be, well, why don't you just get an extra microphone for it? The problem is, there's no place to plug it in. And this also affects a lot of video cameras. A lot of consumer-level video cameras have done away with audio inputs and just want you to use the internal microphone. So, if you want something with audio inputs, like even an accessory shoe or jacks for an extra microphone, you're going to have to spend the extra money. The other solution would be to simply record your sound on a separate device and try to sync it up later. But that adds a whole nother step to your production that, well, is incredibly tedious, and we sort of move beyond sometime around, 1933.